Hopefully this time it works. All right, cool.
We can see it. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Great. All right. So, um, yeah, once you've optimized all of your models based on the Alberto's great recommendations, you're facing another task, which is presenting your data, presenting your data probably as a dashboard or a Power BI report, many of them, many pages, many dashboards. And after all this time, you probably want to do a good job, present the data in a way that will make sense to your end users, that will, be insightful, will be meaningful, be understandable, and above all, actionable, right? So for this session, I've collected the 7 worst Power BI dashboard mistakes that I have encountered in the projects that we do, that we see with our clients and customers all around the world, and hopefully it'll give you some insight of the bad practices, but also, of course, the good practices, because I'll try to give some recommendations how you can mitigate for this and just deliver better dashboards and better reports in Power BI. So my name is Andrej Lapajne. I'm the founder at Zebra BI. I'm a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional, and my primary field is data visualization. So I've been a consultant for 20 plus years. Implementing reporting systems and planning systems and OLAP systems. I'm actually an old school multidimensional OLAP guy, basically, but I've used probably most of the BI platforms. I've been a reseller for Tableau back in 2006. I've used other, tools, Excel, reporting services, business objects, ProClarity back in the day, and so on. But yeah, in the last 3 years, I've been focusing on Power BI, especially on data visualization in Power BI, and we are producing custom visuals for Power BI called Zebra BI, which I'll also show in my presentation. All right. When we talk about dashboards, for me, it boils down to 2 words, understandable and actionable. Let me show you what I mean by that. So this is a typical, this is an example of a Power BI dashboard, which looks quite colorful. You may like it, you may not like it. It certainly has a lot of visuals, and practically each visual is different, right? So we have an attempt at a geographical presentation here. Let me switch to laser pointer. So, like a geomap here, a donut or a pie chart, quite a mandatory element of a typical Power BI dashboard. Then some line charts, area charts, basically some combo charts with columns and lines and so on, and a heat map here, or a tree map, and so on, right? So it's quite colorful. But now, what actually is the point of this dashboard, right? If this is now the data for sales for a certain period of time, right? And you deliver this dashboard to, you publish it, people will look at it. So your bosses, the management will try to understand the data here. They will first have a very simple question, which is my sales performance good or bad? Okay, for this particular period of time. And what is the answer? Can you really tell from this dashboard if the sales performance was good or bad? It's a very, very simple question. It's a trivial question that, I should get an answer. I should understand this, whether it's good or bad, immediately, like in less than one second. And here it's practically impossible to say. I mean, we have all the breakdowns. We have breakdown, by geography, breakdown by product categories, subcategories, customer segments, product categories. We have profit, we have sales, but it's hard to tell whether the performance is good or bad because this particular dashboard does not contain any kind of comparisons. It just has the breakdowns, right, of the sales figure. But it's if you have like I don't know, 10, so the sales here, I don't know, it's 100k or 90k. This could be really good, but it can be also bad depending on what you expected, right? So if you planned for 2 million, then this is terrible, right? But if you planned for half of that, then this is really, really good, right? So very simple question, and I don't get the answer. And then, the next question: how good, how bad? I mean, is it? Are we like on the target, or are we much above the target, or are there certain areas, certain data categories that are much below the plan, or where, for example, the growth rate from previous year has declined significantly, and so on, right? Also, this dashboard does not answer this question, right? Next question then that every user has: why? Right? If we are like 10% below the plan, why? What are the data categories that contributed to this negative variance, and so on? Which again, I don't really get an answer here. And then the last question. So these are the four key questions that your dashboard or your report needs to answer, right? What are we going to do about it? Right? And here I have no idea. I have no idea. I don't even understand what the true performance is. How can I plan any action? How can I act upon this? So these are the four key questions that you need to ask yourself before you push that publish button. I think, right? And now let me show you another dashboard, which is obviously quite different. I mean, the design is quite different, but if I now ask the first question, the same four questions: is my performance good or bad? Well, let's take a look. We have a sales versus plan here. So 22.1 million sales, but here I have the variance to plan. So I also understand that we are 1.1 million below the plan. So little red color here will indicate that, okay? And how good, how bad? Well, exactly 1.1 million below the plan, right? So it's not good. And why? Do I have the answer why? Yeah, sure. Let's take a look at the other visuals around it. They should explain this variance here. And if you provide the breakdown now by this is a retail operation here. So for example, we have two retail chains, and then yeah, they're selling some product categories. And here I have the breakdown of the variance as well. So it's a very simple so-called plus minus chart. So, I see immediately there that, we are in the red here with certain categories, especially this one. So this is like women's clothing, for example, not performing well in this store chain. And in this store chain also, we have certain product categories, again, women's clothing and a few others, right, that are below the plan. And we also know not only why, but also exactly how much did a certain product category contribute to the total variance, right? So we can visually compare in a very, very simple way, in a quick way. This red line here will stand out. It will focus my attention here, and then I will understand the context, right? And then the fourth question: what are we going to do about it? Well, at the moment, I still don't know, right? Because now, of course, I would have to dig into this woman's category, right? Which again, you have to somehow provide For example, if I had another breakdown here, if I had a nice report page tooltip that would explain what is going on within the women's category, if I had a nice drill through to another page that would provide much more detail, then I would understand exactly what's going on with this particular product category. Perhaps there's a problem with certain retail outlets or certain products within this product category or with certain customer segments and so on, right? And once I understand the whole context, then I can plan an action, right? So this is how I believe the dashboards can become understandable and actionable, right? Unfortunately, this is not the case in actually, I would say most of the dashboards that I have seen in Power BI. Um, so I selected like seven points where I feel the situation is not very good. So number one, a bad choice of charts. Um, the charts, not every chart of course is appropriate for every situation. So in this case, again, if you ask yourselves for the same four questions, is my sales performance good or bad, right? And then you take a look at this picture and you see this line going down. It's like, oh no, our sales is going down or something. That's how you understand this line, right? But after reading all the labels and understanding the situation, you will see that this is not time. These are not month or something. It's just breakdown of the revenue by business unit. Okay, so I completely my interpretation of the data here was completely wrong. So the line chart definitely is not appropriate to show breakdowns by certain data categories other than time. So just reserve the line charts for showing trends over time and do not use the line charts for anything else, right? Next, this situation here, total revenue by product. All right, I understand the split. I understand the split here. I understand that this Primus product is like more than half of the sales and so on. So I understand like the shares, the structure shares of the product, right? But again, I have used a lot of space here, almost quarter of this page, for basically one, two, three, four and something values, right? Just four numbers and a quarter of my real estate that I have on a page, right? Which is not really effective. On the same page, I could visualize much more products. I could add the growth rates from previous year or variance to plan. I could even show probably multiple measures, not just the revenue, but also maybe the percent of gross margin or something to understand the profitability, right? So people typically would need more information to really understand what is going on. Um, all right. Next, the next typical problem with charts. If you see this situation here, where the labels are displayed diagonally, then this is a serious indicator that something is wrong with your charts. Okay. Um, all the labels in your reports, in your dashboards, should be displayed horizontally. If you have your labels displayed diagonally, it means that you have probably used the wrong chart or you have some other problem with the labels. But in this case, this is a breakdown by some dispositions. All right. So this is not time. This is not time. It would be better to turn this chart around and just use a chart that has a vertical axis. So if you use charts with vertical axis, then the labels will be displayed horizontally, right? And you can simply put more elements in the bar chart, right? So um, uh, the The recommendation here would be um, turn the charts that are not displaying time around for 90 degrees and just use charts with vertical axis for that. So very simple rule for time. The axis should run from left to right, and use charts with horizontal axis for time trends, like for, if you have days, weeks, month, quarters, annual time series, and so on. Then use the axis that runs left to right. For everything else, use charts with the vertical axis, right? So everything else, like, your products, your customers, your profit centers, cost centers, business units, and so on, use charts with vertical axis. So this is a very, very simple rule, which will probably make your dashboards more understandable, and you will use less space, and they will just become better. Next thing, poor labeling. The labels. So in this example here, I don't I don't have any labels in charts, which is problematic. I mean, of course, Power BI is very nice, and if you hover with your mouse, you will get a nice little tooltip, and you will understand the label. But you can't really expect from all the users that they will try to discover the values by moving their mouse over every little value here, right? So this is the users don't have time for this. So you need to make sure that you include certain labels, right? So this example had no labels at all. Not just the data labels are missing, even the category legends are missing here. So just be careful before you publish your reports and dashboards. Check your labels. um, in previous example, there were no labels at all. Here in this example, this chart has some labels. Um, the labels are quite strange, actually. So you see, everything is in million. Everything is in million, and the labels here don't make any sense really, because they are not precise enough. So the precision here is not enough. You have to use the right precision, right? Probably here at least, to one decimal place, and then the M character is being repeated for each and every label. So there's a lot of redundancy in writing the labels here. So perhaps for this particular case, it would be better um, to put the unit like in $1 million or something here in the title. So this would be this year's sales by store by store name, in $1 million, right? And then then you write a clear label here, zero point 0.6 or something, right, as a label. But this chart has labels, but the other charts don't have the labels. So sometimes yes, sometimes no. Is there a reason for that? I don't know. Only the author of this report knows this. So make sure to check the labels. And then the last example, here clearly there are just way too many labels. So the labels, of course, can overlap. It's not easy to decide which labels you want to display or not. So in this case, just probably not every freaking label. Um, so this is a typical example. Next thing with the labels. Things like this, long labels in charts. So this chart is okay. It runs from left to right because it's month, right? But still the labels are displayed diagonally because they're just simply too long, right? So make sure that you use your calendar, your custom calendar. You build your custom calendar in Power BI with Power Query, or with other techniques. But then when you do that, make sure that your calendar has short month names, and just use the short month names by default in all the charts. And then everything will be much more legible, understandable, and you will use less space for the labels. So keep your labels short, not just month labels, but also other things like category names, product category names, and other types like account names of accounts and so on. Just keep all your labels short because it will result in a cleaner report and dashboard that will be more understandable. Um, yeah, sometimes if you have extreme data visualization, like I have in this example here, I have a lot of charts. So actually, this visual here has 200 charts. So clearly, I don't have the space to show all the labels, right? But some of them are maybe important. So I decided just to use the last label here so that we understand what is the change of the stock value of each and every company. So this is the most important label here, and I just made a decision, a design decision, right, to show just the most important label. But it's here, it's consistent, it's in every chart on the same place, and so on, right? So not necessarily all the labels, but the important ones should be there. Um, all right, my number three. Inconsistent use of colors. Uh, it's quite hard to talk about colors. This could be uh, a separate session, but um, as a very quick recommendation, I would say just use much less colors. So in this example, way too many colors, and this happens again because of inappropriate charts most of the time. So if you're just using this tree map here, this, or Marimekko chart as it's also called, right? You will just simply, Power BI will just um, throw every color from the style, right, from the theme here in the chart. So if you would use the bar chart here, you can simply, instead of all of those colors, you can simply use one color, right? And it will be much better. Similar situation with stack charts. Stack charts only work if they have a limited number of data categories, data series here, right? This is way too much here, and it's not understandable. You don't even know which data series this is here, so it's just way too many colors. So as a quick rule of thumb, I would say um, start with some neutral desaturated colors. Try to make it very functional. This is an extreme case where I'm using dark gray color for start, right? Um, so this is my base color, but then the data categories that are most important are rendered in very saturated colors, because this is where I want the user's attention to be, right? So if I would start with very colorful and red charts in the beginning, right, I would have no more space to highlight the really important information. So that's why number one, start with very neutral, desaturated colors, and then use strong colors for highlighting, for presenting the variances, and so on, right? So it does not necessarily have to be black, right? So you can start with slightly desaturated blue color, or another desaturated color, but make sure that you have this. Um, um, you still have strong colors left, and they will still stand out in certain places of your dashboard and draw the end users attention to the really important data, which in most cases is some kind of a variance, right? It could be a variance to plan, could be variance to previous year. It could be a comparison to, it could be a benchmark like a comparison to your competitors, or to an average, or to the first point in your first data point in your chart, or something like that. Um, okay, and if you do this, if you follow this principle, um, then you will be able to deliver dashboards and reports that will have much more information, because once you clean everything up, use less colors, clean the labels and everything, have short labels, then you create space, and then you can use this space to actually deliver more information, to put more information on a dashboard. And this is where and this is how you actually start creating, um, this is how you enable meaningful comparisons for the end user. So now, for example, I can visually compare, yeah, 10 different product categories in one page, and it's not even the whole page. I still have a another chart here and another chart here. Um, so I have been able to increase the information density on a page, right? And this is only possible if you're using clean charts with a limited number of colors. Otherwise, it would be a, simply um, illegible and not understandable. My number four, not showing variances. This is a really critical problem in Power BI, mostly because the native Power BI charts are not very suitable to show the comparisons, to show the variances. So we saw this example, which does not have any kind of comparisons to plan or to previous year in the visualization here. There's no plan measure, previous year measures, or forecast or anything like that here. Um, well, most of the time, the business dashboards, like sales dashboards, sales versus actual reports, and cost versus actual reports, will have this, right? So you would have the measure, and compare things versus prior year, previous year, or target, or plan, or budget, or something, right? And then you would do it with this chart, with this side-by-side chart, typically, right? Just because Power BI does not really have good data visualization for this situation, right? And this is kind of problematic, because this chart, this page, will always look half blue and half yellow. Okay, but what is actually interesting here? Interesting is the gap, right? So here, how to understand if this is good or bad? First of all, I need to understand which color means plan, which color means prior year, or something, and then, and in this case, actually, it's this is the actual sales. The blue is the actual sales, and this is the yellow one is the one that I have clicked here. So the blue does not really mean target. If you click on the blue button here, it will actually mean it would actually be represented by the yellow color here, which is confusing, of course. And more importantly, I don't really see where do I have the positive situation, or where do I have the negative situation, right? So this is actually a very positive situation here. So I should have like a green line or something. And in certain other cases, so here I have a negative variance. I'm below the plan, right? So visualize the gap, visualize the variance. This is quite important. Unfortunately, it's hard to do in Power BI. So basically, what you need to do in this case, right? You need to calculate a measure in DAX for the variance. Calculate the variance as a measure, and then visualize it with another type of chart, and then you need to do the same for the relative variance, and so on, right? And then maybe you can produce something like this, where the variance is explicitly visualized, right? So this is one thing that Zebra BI visuals actually do. So maybe I'll just switch over to Power BI and just show you quickly, quickly demonstrate this problem. So for example, I'll just use a regular side-by-side chart, and I'll do a sales versus, for example, previous year. Let's break this down by month. Um, like this, right? So this would be your typical side-by-side comparison of sales versus previous year, right? And it's just, it's just one chart, and you don't have the variance, and now you would need to calculate the difference, create a measure and do maybe another chart, and then try to use certain tricks so that you would get different colors for good and bad, right? So that's why Zebra BI does this in a completely different way. So, for example, if I do this with our custom visual, um, which, by the way, is available in the app source, and the basic version is completely free. So you can simply import the visuals into your Power BI, and you'll be able to do this. Split this by month. So this time I have a completely different situation, different visualization here. Um, Zebra BI has actually produced a waterfall chart, um, where now I understand, okay, the previous year value, previous year we had 8.1 million. This year we have 8.8 million, right? And more importantly, the visual has calculated the key information here. So this is called the difference highlight. So obviously we had 8.2% growth from previous year, which is great, which is good. And then I also have the variance for each particular month, right? So if you don't like this chart, I mean, you can also click here and you'll get the result in like dollars, or both variances in absolute variance and relative variance and so on. So the chart is completely interactive and dynamic. Um, if you don't like this chart, then you can use, other types of charts. So this would be like a column chart, which has this gap now visualized. So you see, this is the variance here. You can make it really, really small, and it'll become really compact. So all the most important information will be here. If you um, switch the display here to the relative variance, now you understand, all right, this is the sales, and we are 40% above the plan, right? And in February, 8.8% below the plan, and so on, right? But if you do have space, then you will not just get a bigger chart like in native Power BI visuals, but if there's enough space, the visual will present more information, right? So now that I have the space, the visual has calculated relative variances for all the month, and it has displayed them with this so-called pin chart, or a lollipop chart, as we call it, right? And if you have even more space, right, now the variance has somehow popped out of this chart. So now I have the full picture here. So my actual sales, behind it, the previous year value, and then the absolute variance and the relative variance, right? And then of course, you can choose line charts or area charts. As a rule of thumb, I would say use line charts where where your key message would be, how what is the trend? Are things going up and down? How much, and so on. But um, if you really want to display each and every value, and you expect the user that they will actually compare, this month to this month, then it's better to use column charts, right? And if you want to focus on the goal achievement, on the performance achievement, especially with more financial audience, right, I would suggest to use the waterfall charts. Um, all right, so this is where you have the time, But if you have the other situation, like we said, okay, where you, for example, do a similar thing, actual versus previous year, and now you do a breakdown by another dimension, which is not time. So basically, anything that is not your calendar, then use vertical charts, like we have, for example, in Zebra BI. Let me do a split by some group of business units. You see now I have the vertical chart with the chart with the vertical axis. Again, I have the variances. So you see, now I understand it's a very small chart actually. I haven't even used, I have a lot of space still, but I have a lot of information here. So I know which business unit is most important, right? It's sorted by default. So the things that are more important should be on the top. So sorting is also a part of user experience, a part of good data visualization. I understand that these are my key business units. What was the sales? What is their growth from previous year, and so on. Right. Again, this visual is sort of responsive, like this one. If you make it bigger, the charts will just pop out. Right. Now I have the previous year as a column here. I have the actual values. I have the variances. Now, of course, this is a chart now, but it's also an element here. Why not use this for sorting? So just click once and then you can sort, and now you will focus users' attention to, to the growth from previous year or relative growth. So you can sort by the relative growth. So who are the fastest growing business units, right? And it just becomes more actionable to do it like this, right? If you don't need certain elements, you just hide certain columns and so on. You can reshuffle things around and so on to make sure that you deliver layouts and structures in the most appropriate order. Um, all right, so this would be the variances, the importance of showing the variances. Let's resume this. Um, and then my number 5 would be confusing dashboard layouts and interaction. Again, a topic for a complete for a whole session. Um, but this is a really hard topic. How do you structure all this information into a meaningful dashboard? What do you put on the first page? Or on one page, what do you put on the top? Which charts do you choose? How do you organize them? Um, how do you design for the interaction? This is a hard topic. If I maybe focus on the most frequent, I would say, bad design patterns, I would say probably number one is just abusing the slicers. Um, so people tend to put a lot of slicers as lists on a page, on a report, on a dashboard, uh, which in Power BI does not really make a lot of sense because, for example, here um, I have a slicer, a list of states, and it's using quite a lot of space here just for just to select one state. But in the same space you can actually just present a chart, because the great thing about Power BI is that every visual is actually functions as a slicer, as a filter, basically, right? So it's not exactly the same, but if you just replace the list slicers with a chart, like a vertical chart, then it will still function as a slicer, but then at the same space, the user will understand how important is each country. Um, they will understand the picture, the breakdown of the country, and then they will still click here, right? So I would say try to replace the lists with charts. And then for certain elements, of course, like to choose the year, this should be a slicer somewhere on the top. Um, so this will probably also improve your dashboards, I would say. Um, just generally, I would recommend for the general organization of the dashboards, I would recommend a simple um, design pattern for dashboards, like a two-layer overview detail design pattern where you build a landing page, and this will probably take most of your time to think about, what is the first page that a user will see, what are the KPIs on the first page, how do you organize it, and so on, and then provide good interaction from the landing page to the detail, so that people will just land on this landing page and then go to the detail, go back to the landing page to another detail, and so on, right? So here at this point, let me illustrate this with a real example. This is my example here, the landing. So this is the landing page, right? So the landing page should be organized in a way that, first of all, I understand the key KPIs. So the key KPIs, the best position for them is like top left, because we always read from the top left part. So this is where your key KPIs and the goal achievement should be presented, right, in a certain way. So this could be a very visual, like in this case, which is really, it's kind of simple, right? So this is revenue compared to previous year. We had good growth here, and then we have the same revenue versus plan, which is almost on the target, right? But now I can just switch to my gross profit, check the gross profit. Oh no, this is not good. So the revenue was kind of okay, but the gross profit is below the plan here, right? So this is what my KPI now indicates, and now around this KPI area, provide the breakdown, but breakdown in a way that the variance will be explained, because everybody will now ask, all right, we are, well, 4.1% below the plan. Why? Remember the second question, why? And now, of course, I have other visuals that explain this, like breakdown by business unit, by groups of business units. And I see, oh, mobile business unit sticks out. And again, now I will ask, all right, what's going on in the mobile business unit? And here you need to provide the tooltip. This is one way, of course. I mean, there are lots of ways, but the report page tooltip is a fantastic means in Power BI to explain certain important changes and so on. So we're all lazy. I'm also lazy. So, we just leave the default tooltips in all of the visuals, but especially on landing pages, in important parts of your reports and dashboards, make sure you just invest some time and design a really nice tooltip. Like, for example, now with the tooltips, with the report page tooltips, um, this should stay small. They should not be, huge, and you don't have the space here to provide a whole list of 50 elements or 200 elements and so on. So you need to keep it short. And one really nice way how to keep it short is, like in my example here, the mobile business unit. In the tooltip, I have a breakdown by another dimension, right? So breakdown by country, and now I understand that we have some problems. Oh, sorry, Canada. That was not intentional. But obviously, in this particular case, something is going on in Canada, in United States, and so on. And now, of course, you see this for each business unit. And of course, the list of countries in my tooltip will change because I have used the filter of top N countries that contributed either positively or in a negative way to this result. So I'm basically using top and bottom elements, and then everything else is calculated as the others element, right? Which is really, really hard to do in you can do it in DAX, of course. I'm sure that Alberto has said good recipes for this, but it's again a function that Zebra BI has natively natively in the chart. So you can simply switch on top and bottom, and then everything else will be calculated within the visual as this others um, category so that you get the total, right? But of course, the tooltip is not enough. I need to understand, more about what is going on in my business unit. So this is the place where you do the drill through, okay, where you provide the drill through to the user so they can, for example, click. There are two ways basically in Power BI. You can the basic drill through is available as on the right click menu. So I can drill through here to the report by country, or in the latest version of Power BI, you have the drill through buttons. So for example, this is a quite a nice thing here. I have a hidden button here. It's always there, but it's just designed that it's not visible by default. But when I click here, I get this button, and this is a more user-friendly experience for an end user because now they have this button. It'll appear, and now they can drill um, the data for the mobile business unit by country. So if I just click on the button, I get a detailed report for the mobile business unit, which obviously has two major product categories like smartphones or tablets. So I can click here. And when you click here, make sure that you use dynamic titles. So every visual in Power BI has a possibility to display a dynamic title, not just a fixed text that you write in the title. You actually can sorry, this is the title, right? You can just use a function for that. So if you use a short DAX code that will return the selections of your filters and so on, this is the place where you can then use those measures that will just return the right text, and everything will be much more understandable for an end user. All right. Of course, then you have some back buttons here. Um, what else? On a landing page, I would recommend to spend some time to provide nice onboarding experience for an end user. So one really nice way to do this is provide like a help overlay. For this is typically done with bookmarks, and that will change the state. So for example, if I click here, now I get a help overlay, which is basically a couple of elements, a couple of visuals that were hidden by default. And then click on a button just toggles the state, invokes a bookmark where these elements are just visible. And in my case, I have used animated GIFs. So small little animations in the form of animated GIF file, which is then used here as a picture, right? And then you can provide a few tips how to use the dashboard for an end user. So this is also one part of a dashboard that I would recommend. And then do this kind of a you see, no, I only have the slicers here, and then everything else is done. Like the navigation should go somehow through the front page, through the landing page to the detail. Like for example, here, these are my business units. I have a transparent button. So if I go here, click here, I will get more detailed reports for, by business unit, and this is the place, these are now regular report pages where you can provide more information, drill down to 3 or 4 or 5 levels of detail, provide more options, more slicers, like what is the situation on a month or a year to date, in year to date period, right? Um, or provide both in the same table, so at once, so that I understand, all right, what's the situation in October for the month, like month to date, and then year to date, all in the same table basically, or even more, slightly more complex with the KPIs and then monthly and year to date values. And then the last thing, the trends. Trends, this is also something that is chronically missing in Power BI. So here you see,
Andre, just want to do a quick time check because we need to save
yep,
some time for our last presenter. So need
yeah,
to.
sure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, so this would be my last tip here. So make sure that you deliver time trends in your dashboards as well. So you have all the elements presented in on a page, and that they are scaled. Um, all right. So this brings me to the end. I do have the presentation here, which I will share with a couple of tips here. So there'll be a handout then with some more pages in the PowerPoint presentation, just explaining what I have shown here, like a checklist for the landing page and so on. So thank you for your attention. If there are any questions,
So I'm just taking. We got a couple in the window here. So somebody could maybe go on mute. I'm getting a little bit of a background noise there. So one question here: how important are bookmarks and learning how to manage them? That's one question here for you, Andre.
oh yeah, the bookmarks. This is also one area where I think people are just abusing basically bookmarks. Um, for me, I think bookmarks are used way too much in Power BI. The problem of bookmarks in Power BI is that they will make your they will make your dashboards really complicated, because with a bookmark, you then have to have certain like if you use bookmarks to change the content inside a visual. It means that you will have probably two visuals and then toggle the state between visible and unvisible in two charts. So you will have two visuals, doubled or tripled or quadrupled visuals in your page, which is very time consuming to create, but also it's very messy to maintain. So my recommendation would be, do not use bookmarks and buttons for things like changing things like this, like change a KPI in your visual. This should be done with DEX and with a normal Power BI slicer. So for example, the slicers here, these are normal Power BI slicers, right? And they simply change the content here with a simple DEX. Like this measure here just evaluates, the selection and, returns the right information. So I would not use bookmarks for that. But sometimes you do need the bookmark. So like I have it here, basically I would just use it for some additional information that pops out somewhere, like for the overlays or something.
Nice.